I have trouble imagining a dinner party without meat, so a bourbon dinner always revolves around an entree like beef or duck or squid, and often the other courses include meat too. But my wife Marilyn asked me to cook dinner for a group of her yogi friends, some of whom are vegetarian. Bourbon is plant-based, so that's a good thing, and a dinner salad is always nice. No, I just don't know if I can make a meatless meal that's flavorful, savory, and satisfying enough for a bourbon dinner.
No.
I'm starting this meal with a recipe I've made many times for the family, focaccia. This is another creation of master baker Peter Reinhardt. The secret to this focaccia is herb oil made with plenty of basil and other fresh herbs and almost 3 cups of olive oil. The resulting crumb is so moist and chewy and flavorful that diners fill themselves up on this appetizer if they're not careful. I'll be topping it with tomatoes and caramelized onions. For the aperitif, instead of champagne or prosecco, I'm serving Gibson cocktails, the martini's savory cousin. Pickled cocktail onions lend an umami flavor to this drink's gin and dry vermouth and should complement the focaccia. For our salad course, I wanted something crunchy but also chewy. Fresh corn and avocado salad with cherry tomatoes, thinly sliced red onion, and basil leaves fit the bill perfectly. I had hoped to use the corn from our garden boxes, but it's taken longer than expected to ripen. But the basil and other herbs will be garden fresh. For the entree, I'm making rotolo di spinaci, or spinach roll. For this dish, I'll roll fresh spinach, leeks sautéed in butter, herbs, spices, and Parmesan cheese into a log made out of potato gnocchi dough. This should be a savory dish we can sink our teeth into. Accompanying the spinach roll will be 2 sides, spiced roasted carrots with lentils and sautéed morel mushrooms and shallots. The carrots and lentil could serve as a main course, but should work well as a side to the spinach roll too. This dish has a Middle Eastern flair with cumin, coriander, paprika, and a handful of dates thrown in. In contrast to the roasted carrots, the morel mushrooms I'm preparing have few spices. A little minced shallot and garlic, along with a splash of soy sauce and lemon juice, enhance but don't overwhelm the delicate taste of this mushroom. And for dessert, I'm serving up a simple and refreshing serving of apricots, homemade yogurt, and honey, with toasted pistachios sprinkled over the top. It's Friday morning, the day before the dinner party, and we're going to start the advanced preparations with the yogurt. So I've got 2 quarts of milk here. This is whole raw milk, and I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of heavy cream to that. And we're going to heat this up to 180, 200 degrees. And after that heats up, we're going to add a few tablespoons of yogurt to it to get it started. Then we're going to let it sit for 12 hours. It's almost there. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Right about 200. So now we're going to cool it down. And I'm going to use an ice bath for this one. And we want to cool it down to about 120, 110 degrees. All right, that's down about 115 degrees. We're going to take half a cup of the warm milk. And we're going to whisk into that 4 tablespoons of yogurt. And we want to whisk this up until it's smooth. Then I'm going to whisk that yogurt milk mixture back into the rest of the milk. And I'm going to put it in the oven. The oven is off. I have the light on to keep it warm. And we'll keep it in there for about 12 hours. I've turned to the spinach roll, and I've blanched and squeeze dried the spinach and
oil the potatoes. Now it's time to get those dressed.
Continuing on now with the spinach roll, I've sliced up a leek into fairly thin rings, and we're going to be heating this up. So I've got butter and olive oil. If you need the exact measurements, check out the website. We're going to heat that up, and then we're going to fry up the leeks for about 20-25 minutes. Alright, the butter is melted now, so we're going to put the leeks in. Turn it down to low. Add a little bit of salt to it. And we're going to cover it and let it cook for about 20-25 minutes. The leeks have been in now for about 25 minutes, so let's take a look. Yeah, those are good. So what I'm going to do now is turn this to high and add the spinach into it. We're just going to stir it around enough to for the spinach to absorb the liquids. All right, that looks good. So this is going to be the filling for the spinach roll, and into this we're going to mix a couple different things. I have about a pinch of nutmeg and some fresh ground black pepper, Parmesan cheese, and ricotta cheese. And we're going to mix all those together. That's good. And now we're going to turn back to the dough. Now we have the potatoes that heated this morning, and what I'm going to do now is rice these in the food mill. Alright, I think that'll do it. And now we're going to make the dough out of potatoes. So I'm going to put a bit of a well in here in the middle and crack an egg in there. And we're going to gradually add flour up to 5.5 ounces. All right. Now we're going to roll out the dough. Now we're going to spread the spinach on it. Now we're going to roll this up into a log. And we're going to crimp the ends down and press the seams just a little bit. We're going to be boiling this, and to help maintain the shape, we're going to wrap this paper around it, and then we're going to wrap aluminum foil around the paper. Water is boiling now, and we've got to be careful. We're going to slip it in there, and this is just barely going to fit in the roasting pan. I'm going to let this come to a boil again, and then boil it for about 30 minutes. So now we're going to start on the focaccia. This is the garden box here, and I was going to use the corn for tomorrow, but it's not quite ripe yet. But what is ripe is the basil. All right, and over here we've got some rosemary and thyme and parsley. I'm just debating with myself how to get this spinach log out of here without breaking it. It's been in for 30 minutes, and I guess we'll just give it a go. And there you can take a look, see how it's looking. I think it did all right. Yeah. I think I had the camera off when I was mixing the herb oil as well as making the dough for the focaccia. For the herb oil, I took all of those herbs that I had cut today and I warmed up 2 cups of olive oil. And to that I added a tablespoon of coarse salt, a teaspoon of coarsely ground black pepper, 6 cloves of fresh garlic, which I chopped up pretty fine, half a teaspoon of ground cayenne pepper, a tablespoon of fennel seeds, and a tablespoon of dried minced onion. And I'm letting it steep. It'll steep for a couple hours now. And for the bread, I took 5 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of yeast, and 2 teaspoons of salt. Mix those together by hand. And I added to the flour and yeast and salt 6 tablespoons of olive oil, as well as 2 cups of water warmed to 80 degrees. And then after mixing it up into kind of a shaggy ball by hand, we put it in the stand mixer, and it's going about 8 minutes at a medium-low speed. All right, that looks about done. I've dusted the counter with the island with some flour, and we're going to turn the dough out on it. We're just going to let it rest for about 5 minutes. Alright, the dough has been resting for about 5 minutes, so now we're going to stretch it out a bit. So what we're going to first do is stretch it out about double its length, and then we're going to fold it like a letter over on itself. So one side goes up to the middle, start at the top, the other side, and stretch it all the way down to the edge. And we're going to spray it with some oil. Let me square it up here first a little bit. We don't want this drying out. Sprinkle some more flour on top. And put the plastic back on it. Now we're going to let this sit for 30 minutes. And we're going to repeat that step twice more.
Makes me cry. You flow like